helicopters approaching. They were close. The lights went out and the helicopters began to shoot.
Connecting two oceans, two worlds, two peoples, the Panama Canal stretches 48 miles through the country of Panama. Panama was under Colombian control for many years, but had tried to attain independence. In 1903, the United States sent military advisors and equipment to Panama, helping secure Panama's bid for independence. After the war, the United States and Panama signed the Hay-Buena-Varilla Treaty that allowed the U.S. to finish the Panama Canal, which was started by the French but then was abandoned. The U.S. would have absolute control over the canal and canal zone. The United States also secured the rights to build several military bases around the country. In return, the Panamanian government would receive 5% of the income brought in by the canal. The following decades would see increasing tension between the people of Panama and the United States military. Many Panamanians were fed up with their government, so in 1968, a military coup replaced a pro-American government with a military dictatorship headed by Omar Torrijos. In 1974, relations between Panama and the United States reached a high water mark when President Jimmy Carter and Omar Torrijos signed the Torrijos-Carter Treaty. The treaty stated that America was to relinquish control of the canal by 1999. Ronald Reagan, who opposed the Torrijos-Carter Treaty, soundly defeated Jimmy Carter. Fatefully, Torrijos was killed in a plane crash in 1981. Officially, his death was declared an accident, but many in the United States and Panama speculate that CIA and General Manuel Noriega had placed a bomb on the plane, causing the plane to explode in mid-air. Quickly to take Torrijos' place, Noriega assumed power and took control of the government. At the time of Torrijos' death, Noriega was head of the Military Intelligence Department in Panama and had been a CIA contact for years. He provided information of the government in Panama, as well as the governments in Colombia, Nicaragua, and many rebel outfits all over Central America. Because of his many different connections, the U.S. government turned a blind eye to his illegal drug dealings with the Colombian drug cartel. Vice President George H. Walker Bush, under President Ronald Reagan, used Noriega to help aid the different rebel Contra groups in their fight against the Nicaraguan Sandinista de Liberación Nacional government. General Noriega was shipping weapons into northern Costa Rica to the Contra rebel groups using propeller planes. In return, his government was protected by the CIA and received huge sums of money. However, the pilots flying these weapons into Costa Rica were also flying in cocaine and other drugs. These drugs would eventually reach American soil. General Manuel Noriega was testing the patience of his American bosses as he hosted the South American Contadora meeting in 1984. Here, Latin American countries met and demanded that the U.S. not interfere with Central and South American politics. When the Iran-Contra scandal became public in the U.S., many of Noriega backers in the United States were fired. To make matters worse, Noriega was losing the support of the Panamanian people. Noriega participated in a countrywide drug bust. Working with the DEA, he rounded up hundreds of suspected drug runners and producers. Noriega also froze millions of dollars in the national banks, bringing the Panamanian economy to a halt. Many who opposed him took the streets in anger as rioters held Panama City hostage. Many of his opponents flew to Washington to testify about Noriega's drug dealings. Manuel Noriega used the Panamanian Defense Force, also known as the PDF, to stop the riots. The U.S.'s response was swift. Economic sanctions were placed on Panama and more than 1,000 troops were flown into U.S. bases. However, General Noriega still would not listen to the United States' demands. President Bush, using the CIA, gave $10 million to Noriega's opponents in the 1989 Panamanian presidential election. The U.S. supported presidential hopeful Guillermo Andara, a corporate lawyer who had studied in the United States. When the elections were held, it became quite clear that Guillermo would win the election. In an attempt to maintain his power, Noriega called off the presidential election. On live television, Guillermo Andara and his running mates were severely beaten by President Noriega's Dignity Battalion. This would seal Noriega's fate. The U.S. government felt it had exhausted all other options. President Bush ordered the CIA to contact several disgruntled generals in the PDF. The CIA encouraged the generals to start a coup and promised U.S. support. However, the attempt failed and all the assailants were captured. Noriega's PDF troops were now actively clashing with U.S. military forces around the country. A tense standoff ensued as several U.S. Marines and soldiers were killed in a confrontation. No one is for sure who fired first, but these flare-ups would eventually engulf the entire nation. President Bush ordered 20,000 troops, hundreds of attack helicopters, and thousands of armored vehicles to Panama. On December 20th, 1989, the U.S. launched a midnight invasion of Panama. Operation Just Cause had begun. The invasion had two objects: to remove Manuel Noriega from power and to destroy his personal army. PDF forces were stationed dangerously close to residential neighborhoods. During the invasion, many of the neighborhoods were hit with artillery and helicopter gunfire. Consequently, many women and children died in the fighting as neighborhoods were engulfed in flames. The days and weeks following the first day of the invasion were marred with violence and chaos. A combination of U.S. government censorship and miscommunication resulted in little news of the first 4 hours of the invasion. As the dust settled, 18,000 refugees were taken to detention centers to be processed. President Guillermo Andara was sworn in as president at a U.S. military base and was flown into Panama City. Finally, on October 3, 1989, Noriega surrendered to U.S. troops. He was sent to the United States and was found guilty of money laundering and drug trafficking. The international community condemned the invasion. The United Nations voted overwhelmingly against the United States. They said the invasion was a flagrant violation of international law. President Bush defended his reason for war and believed he removed a dangerous dictator from South America. However, many Panamanians of the poorer class saw the United States as an imperial conqueror, spreading her influence all across the hemisphere. Whatever the case, 20,000 Panamanians had lost their homes and thousands had died or had been wounded. Panama was rebuilt under the leadership of President Guillermo Andara. Panama has now become one of the richest countries in South America. Crime rates have steadily fallen, but drug trafficking still runs rampant, as the Colombian cartels jockey for power in the country. Finally, in 1999, all of Panama celebrated when the canal was transferred over to the Panamanian people. A new era was ushered in for American foreign policy. America has shown to the world that it was willing and capable to use force to change a government in a foreign country. America was going to make sure her interests came first. Many believe that this invasion was a dress rehearsal for the invasion of Iraq during the Gulf War. America was stepping into the shoes of becoming a global police officer. The invasion exposed the United States' undercover operations as well as its attempt to censor media during times of crisis. Operation Just Cause was not just an invasion. It was an intricate web of diplomacy between two nations with different goals. The seeds of the invasion were planted many years before 1989, and it finally came to fruition in one spectacular explosion. The invasion transformed the nation of Panama. When diplomacy fails, or when a peaceful solution is not found, men, women, and children pay the ultimate price.
Lest we forget how fragile we are.